Hello and welcome. My name is Cheryl Miki. I'm a program consultant here at the Manitoba Arts Council. Tonight, our session is all about community impact grants. We're joined tonight by our communications team, Elise Soret and Vi Husin. They're handling our behind the scenes session. We're also joined by Echo, which is providing our ASL interpretation, and we're grateful that they can be here with us tonight. We are going to be recording this session, and so we should have the recording up for you next week or so if you would like to revisit this presentation or if you would like to share it with others. If you do have any questions, we will be having a question and answer session at the end of the PowerPoint. So please do put them into the either the chat section or the Q&A section, which both of them are buttons that should be available on your Zoom screen. And I am going to give you our agenda for this evening. So tonight we are going to talk just very, very briefly. We'll give you a little bit about the Manitoba Arts Council. We're going to talk about the purposes of the grant. We're going to talk about who is eligible to apply. We'll go over the parameters or the specs of the grant. And we'll also talk about how to start an application. And then we'll go over the 4 sections that are within the application. And we'll talk about the assessment process for the applications. And then at the end, we'll have, again, that question and answer period. So about Manitoba Arts Council. So the Arts Council carries out its work on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota and Dene nations, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge that Northern Manitoba includes ancestral lands of the Inuit. Our office is located in Winnipeg on Treaty 1 territory, but our work extends throughout the province through Treaties 2, 3, 4, and 5. We respect the treaties that were made on these lands, and we remain committed to working in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. We recognize that Indigenous peoples' knowledge of and relationship with the land, water, and air is key to a sustainable future for us all. And the Manitoba Arts Council, we respect the distinct worldview and creative culture of Indigenous communities by prioritizing Indigenous artistic and cultural expression through our granting programs and through our initiatives. So MAC is an arm's length organization of the Government of Manitoba, and we fund the creation and sharing of arts and culture throughout the province. We operate in both English and French, and the majority of our funding decisions are made by peer assessment, and this ensures that funding allocations are decided by the arts community for the arts community. So we have 14 different grant programs, and they're categorized into 6 different streams based on the type of, in general, the type of activity within them. We have create grants for creating. We have share grants for sharing artistic works. We have learn grants for improving and learning about your artistic practice. We have Indigenous 360, support, and recognize as well. And tonight we're going to be focusing on the support community impact grant. So the purpose of the grant, support community impact, it's an annual grant that supports not-for-profit community arts and cultural organizations in delivering impactful programming. Thing to note about this grant is that it's not a project grant. It is, in effect, a small operating grant, and it supports community not-for-profit organizations to deliver their annual programming. And so it helps to cover programming costs as well as administrative costs. And with this application, it's funding to support the organization for their 2024-25 fiscal year. And so that's a bit of a difference between a program grant and a an operating kind of grant, in that it's not one particular program or project, it's the entire organization that we're looking to support. So who is eligible to apply? First thing to note is that only community not-for-profit organizations are eligible to apply to this grant. And so what we mean by a community not-for-profit is that essentially, in this case, we're looking for organizations that are volunteer-run, that and that deliver impactful arts programming. They also have to have arts and culture as a primary focus of their mandate. So it's not just a one-off thing that happens every blue moon, once in a blue moon. Arts and culture must be the heart of the organization in terms of what it is that you do. The applicants for this program, the organization should be volunteer run or have minimal staff. And by minimal, we're thinking, like maybe one contract person, maybe you've got somebody doing some part-time, that kind of thing. But really, we're looking at organizations that really are quite small in terms of, administrative structure. You also have to have been delivering arts and cultural programming for at least 2 years. And for this grant, you need to have other revenue sources in place. So either you're getting funding from somewhere else, or let's say you have revenue from ticket sales or donations, things like that. And we're also looking for organizations that pay Manitoba artists. That is the foundation of the Arts Council. And so we do look for that in all of the organizations that we fund. Do you have a list of ineligible organizations for this particular grant as well? And it might seem like a long list. And so just bear with me. So professional arts organizations. And so what we mean by this is large sort of very, very well-established arts organizations that have, significant staff in place already. Those organizations are not eligible to come to this community impact grant. If they're looking for operating funds, they're encouraged to try their hand at the Support Operate program, which is a different grant fund. Individuals and professional arts groups aren't eligible to apply. Again, you must be an organization with either a board of directors or an advisory body that oversees takes responsibility for and oversees the running of the organization. Museums, heritage groups, and libraries are ineligible to apply, and that's because those organizations receive funding through different branches of the government. Also, non-independent organizations. So what we're talking about here is organizations that are sort of attached to or are linked to a larger institution. And that link is so close that the organization cannot be independent in terms of their financial operations, doesn't have artistic or curatorial independence to make decisions for their programming and for their finances. Municipalities are ineligible to apply. Charitable foundations also are ineligible. And there's a difference, though, between a charitable organization and a charitable foundation. So organizations that are charities, if you meet the other criteria, absolutely, you can apply. If you're a foundation, though, a foundation is a different type of charitable organization where their main purpose is to collect funds and then distribute those funds to other groups. So that's very different. So foundations are not eligible to apply to this program. Organizations that are receiving funds through our support operate program cannot apply to this program as well. If you are eligible for both of those programs, you do need to choose which one you would apply to, and there are pros and cons for both of those different organizations that you're going to want to take into consideration. And also organizations that are receiving ongoing funding from the Department of Sport, Culture, Heritage, and Tourism. And we do get a lot of questions about this in particular. And so, because we know that the Department of Sport, Culture, and Heritage and Tourism has a lot of project grants, but they also have a lot of operating grants. And so if you are unsure, just give us a shout and we'll go over that with you. And, we understand that there's a lot of nuances out there in terms of the types of organizations and the types of funding that you might receive. So it's absolutely welcome and encouraged to speak with us about it, and then we can clarify any questions that you might have. All right, so what are the grant specs? What are we talking about here? Well, the application deadline is May 1st. It's an annual grant, so you would apply once a year. The grant amount that you can request is up to 50% of your annual revenues from all sources, or $15,000, whichever is less. The notification of the results happens within 3 months from the time that you apply. And like I said before, with the Support Operate grant, for example, this grant does conflict with two of our other grants. So the one is the Support Operate, and I'll just tell you specifically. So the Community Impact Grant. It's a grant to fund an entire fiscal year's worth of activities, right? So you're applying not for one particular project or one particular event, but you're applying for your organization's 2024-25 fiscal year. And so the Support Operate grant also runs on a fiscal year basis. And so that's why you can't apply to both, because that would be in effect that you are applying for the exact same thing, the same costs, the same expenses in two different grants. And that's kind of a no-no. For us, we have that for all of our grants, that you can't put in applications for the exact same expenses twice. Now, if you are currently receiving a Support Operate grant but are thinking to change over to this grant, then certainly give us a shout. If you're unclear at all about how the timing of these things work, because we do know that it can perhaps be a little bit confusing. Also, the other grant that proposes a conflict with this grant is the Artists in Communities grant. And so again, if you are successful, if you put in an application for community impact, then for that 24-25 fiscal year, for which you're receiving that funding, you would not be able to apply to Artists and Communities, again, for those same activities. So again, I know it can be a little confusing, but please do reach out and give us a shout if you have some questions about that, and sort of charting out the granting path for your organization. So starting an application. So the first step, and I know this sounds a little bit basic, but really and honestly, read the guidelines. There's a lot of information, a lot of detail in both the grant guidelines for the specific grant that you're applying for, but also read the general guidelines. And so the general guidelines are basically the rules and regulations for MAC grants as a whole. And so the general guidelines cover all kinds of things about, how to apply, how to do final reports, rules and regulations, how to submit a funding agreement. Like there's just lots and lots of detailed information. And so we encourage you to read both of those so that you really have a good sense of what you're going into when you start to apply. for any of our grants, really. So both of those guidelines are available on our website, which is artscouncil.mb.ca/grants. But it's also, whenever you start an application, the guidelines for that grant are also embedded in the application itself, so that you can refer to those guidelines, as you're answering questions in the application. And if you're a little bit unsure about things, you can refer back and forth as you're doing the application. So where are the applications? So the applications are in your Manipogo profile. And so Manipogo is our online granting site. This is where you create a profile, and you would have you would either have already in place, or you would go in and create a profile for the organization. Now that's different from your own individual. Let's say you are an artist yourself. That's different from your personal from your personal profile. So this is for the organization, and in there you would need to have uploaded a history of your organization, and that history then becomes part of your organization profile. So when you log in, a list of all of the open applications that are available to you are there. So you would just click on the community impact application and it would open for you. If you don't currently have an organization profile for your organization, then just make sure that you allow yourself a couple of extra weeks before starting the application, just to get your profile in place, because it can take a little bit of time, and you want to make sure that you have all of that in place, and then give yourself lots of time to actually write the application. So there are 4 sections to the application, and so those sections are programming, inclusion, administration, and support materials. And so those sections directly correspond to the criteria that the assessors are going to use when they are evaluating your grant application. So in the first section, which is programming, this is where you're going to input details of the activities that you intend to do for the 24-25 fiscal year. So in this section, you'll also be asked to describe who your programming is for, and how is it important to your community. And also, how does your programming support Manitoba artists? This section is really very important. Here's where you really want to tell your story about, all the amazing and great work that you do. And here you want to be telling how much impact that you have on your community, because that will that comprises a fairly large section of the evaluation of the grant. The next section is inclusion. And so here at MAC, we really believe in the importance of arts and culture for the benefit of all Manitobans. And we strive for funding and programs and policies that are equitable for everyone. And so organizations that receive funding through our support program, so through community impact and through support operate, for example, we kind of expect these organizations to be leading by example in the areas of truth and reconciliation, accessibility, and equity. And so in the application, you'll see that we'll ask you to describe how your organization is making progress in at least some of these areas. Third section is administration. And so here is where you talk about your organization and how it's run. And this is how this type of grant is different from a project grant, because here we want to know about about who's running the organization, how it's run, and is the administration effective? And so here we'll want to see some details about your board of directors or the advisory body that's responsible for your organization. We'll also ask you to tell us how your organization is run. Give us a sense maybe of who the decision makers are, or how the day-to-day activities play out. There is a short budget form that we'll ask you to fill out, and that budget will be, again, not just for the one program that you might have, it'll be for the whole year. So the different revenues you might have, and again, we haven't broken it up into like tons and tons of categories, just briefly, the revenues for the year and your expenses for the year. And we will ask you, and so that is going to be for the 24-25 year, again, what you're projecting. We will ask you, though, to upload a copy of your past year's financial statements. And so your financial statements need to include a statement of financial position. And so this is sometimes also called a balance sheet. And you also need to include a statement of revenues and expenses. And both of those documents need to be signed by 2 of your organization's board members. And the last section is support material. And so, some support material is, these are sort of perhaps visual, audio, or maybe even written examples of the kinds of work that your organization does and the kinds of work that you've described in the application. And so, for example, you might want to throw in some images from a production that you've done, or from exhibitions that you do, or maybe you have some musical recordings, or perhaps you have video recordings, again, of the work that you've put on. There could be written material, there could be like brochures, or perhaps you've had posters, things like that. Photos of workshops. Like if your organization does a lot of community workshops, photos of those workshops, those classes that you offer, gatherings that you've had. You really want to help the assessors to get a real sense of the activities that your organization does. So yes, so moving on to assessment and the assessors. So the first thing to know is that support community impact, it's competitive. And so all of our grants are competitive. And so just putting in an application doesn't guarantee that you'll receive funding. So how those decisions are made. So your application will be assessed by a committee of Manitoban arts professionals, and they're going to evaluate the impact of your programming, your progress in inclusion, and the administration of your organization and its finances. And so the way that the assessors do this is the assessors are provided with a list of very specific questions that are specific to this grant. And those questions that the assessors use, those are in the program, in the grant guidelines. So we do encourage you to read those before you start writing your grant application, because it can really give you some insight as to what it is that the assessors are looking for, what kinds of strengths and successes and abilities, are they looking at, and so that might help you to be able to frame the answers that you give, to really tell your story of your organization and the great work that your organization does. So the other thing that I also recommend is that you contact us well before the grant deadline because one of the services that we offer to all of our clients is we can help you with your application by reading your draft before you submit it, and we can look through and see, okay, are the answers fulsome? Are there bits that are missing, or is there anything that's confusing, or something that perhaps might not be clear, from an assessor's point of view? We can give you that feedback before you submit the application. And that way, that gives you an opportunity to kind of work a little bit more on the application. We've found that in general, applicants who come and seek that kind of assistance, with their grants tend to have better success rates at the assessment table. So I do strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. We do have like 5 program consultants here on staff, and that is one of the things that we do. And so one of the things I'm going to read out loud the contact information, just in case we have anyone listening who may have visual impairments. So our telephone number is 204-945-2237. We also have a toll-free number if you're calling from outside the city of Winnipeg, which is 1-866-994-2787. And we also have a team who works our help desk, and their email address is helpdesk, that's HELPDESK, at arts, ARTS, council, COUNCIL.MB.ca. And they are really great. They are so great. And we so appreciate the work that they do. And they know all the ins and outs of the online granting system. And they can also help you with accessing funding for accessibility funding, I should say, should you or your organization require it. And then they're just, overall great people. Yeah.